including the strategic gapping of spoil banks along nearly 2 miles of the southern bank of the canal. The project seeks to reestablish the natural water flow within the ecosystem. These modifications of the canals, allowing for a more balanced hydrologic system. Restoration will not only improve the water distribution, but also enhance soil moisture levels, which are critical for revitalizing the flora and fauna in this area. Additionally, by restoring the natural hydrology, the project will promote biodiversity, improve water quality, and help mitigate erosion. The reintroduction of the water to these areas will support the growth of native vegetation, providing essential habitat for various wildlife species, and contributing to the overall ecological health of the region.
We should say in the video, it's because I got off the internet on the other end.
Quickly, a few other notable updates on behalf of CPRA. I think it was presented to you during our last board meeting. We were kicking off our public meetings for the master plan process. We conducted 4 of those. I was fortunate enough to go to 3 and appreciated the discussion there. Obviously, this is a critical process for us as an agency to develop our 2029 master plan. It's an opportunity for new residents to become engaged, for young professionals to start to see how we do things. So appreciate the team and the effort to continue this process. I know we've studied a lot and we have a very robust annual plan ahead of us in the years to come, but continuing this process really facilitates the public engagement and helps new people become more engaged in our process. We had over 166 attendees across these 4 meetings. Participants had the opportunity to really understand how the state master, how the state's coastal challenges have evolved, potential solutions, and how CPRA planning tools can guide the creation of these projects. One note I'd like to make sure the public is aware of, new projects are being accepted until Friday, October 17th, 2025. There's a QR code there on the screen. I'm sure we can pull that back up later at the end if people need to see it. With the 6-year planning cycle, we have a unique opportunity here to bring in new project ideas now, evaluate them, and for those that may get screened out, the CPRA staff will be able to go back to the project submitters and give them feedback on how they may be able to improve their process, or their project, I should say. So I hope people take advantage of that. It's a thoughtful update that we have in this year's planning cycle, and I look forward to seeing the new project ideas. One of the fun things we did, and something I was unfortunate to miss out on, Sunday, August 3rd, CPRA hosted the Acadiana Heritage Day during the first 3 Sundays at the LSU River Study Center. The event was a great success, bringing together Acadian history and coastal culture through the exchanging of exhibits, live performances, and interactive experiences for all ages. Visitors enjoyed Acadian dancing by the students at Alamo Elementary, learned more about Acadiana brown cotton, I didn't even know existed, traditional boat building, and coastal restoration and other topics. We had about 247 visitors this day, and I want to thank our 5 exhibitors, the Center for Traditional Boat Building, Alamo Elementary Traveling Cajun Dancers, Acadiana Brown Cotton, Terrebonne National Estuary Program, and the CPRA staff in charge of the Chapel Island Master Plan, as well as the volunteers and staff who help put this on each month. Personal highlight of mine, we were able to, through CPRA, the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, we've been conducting sea turtle nesting surveys on the Chandler Island now for the 4th consecutive year. And so far this season, we've observed unprecedented results. A true highlight of mine, and appreciate the partnership with Wildlife and Fisheries to be able to go out there just 7 days on the job and see probably one of the most successful hatches that they've witnessed the entire time. I think they had 99 successful hatches out of 1 nest. This year's survey, Mark, is funded by a $25,000 grant from Shell through Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Foundation and the Water Institute. So far, we've seen a total of 51 sea turtle crawls have been documented, including 33 Kent Ridley, 15 loggerhead, 1 green, and 2 unidentified species. These numbers document significant sea turtle nesting activity on Louisiana's Barrier Island chain. The survey team has located and monitored many successful Kent Ridley turtle nests, which have produced more than 525 hatches. These nests represent only a portion of the success occurring across the Chandler Island, as it is believed that many more nests just could not be observed. This year's high nest success is a historic win for the world's rarest and most endangered sea turtle, as 85% of the nests found have successfully hatched. This season's success is a testament to the power of state, federal, and private partners working together to restore critical habitats and protect Louisiana's coastal wildlife. This momentum offers hope for the continued restoration of the Chandler Islands and the long-term recovery of the species that depend on them. Another highlight as well, on August 7th, CPRA joined the staff of several Louisiana congressional delegation offices for a tour of the West Closure Complex, led by the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority West. It was amazing to see the size and that structure. I'm sure many of y'all have been there, but it was actually my first time being there and just seeing the power of those pumps. It's an enormous testament to engineering and the ingenuity of the community and the dependence that we have on these structures to help keep floodwaters at bay. The attendees learned more about how the systems help safeguard the surrounding region. We were able to see many other features, including the Mississippi River levees, flood walls along Peters Road, and the Harvey Canal sector gates. Flood Protection West shared a lot of history and the critical importance of the flood protection system, and discussed some of the recent improvements and the need for continued investment in this in its own resiliency. And finally, just a week ago now, on August 14th, we had what I would consider a nearly unprecedented level of core leadership down in South Louisiana. We were honored to be able to host Adam Tell, the new Assistant Secretary of the Army, Lee Forsgren, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Major General Jason Kelly, the USAID's Deputy Commanding General for Civil and Emergency Operations, as well as Colonel Lotan and many of his team on Grand Isle. They took a flyover to look at the HISRA system, the West Shore Lake Pontchartrain system, and I believe Morganza to the Gulf. The group was also joined by other dignitaries, including Governor Jeff Landry, Attorney General Liz Morrell, Grand Isle Governor Mayor David Carmel. What I would say is that it is not often that I think about the alignment or see the alignment from the local government through our state agencies, to the chairman, to the governor, to our federal partners, both at the district, at the headquarter level, and to the White House with the president, coming together in near complete alignment around solving some of the state's most critical problems. I am optimistic about what this meeting, the fruits of what this meeting will bear, not only for Grand Isle, for Morganza to the Gulf, but for many, many other projects all along South Louisiana. I don't want to overstate what I think we were able to accomplish during this visit, but I think it was a tremendous step forward, and I appreciate those people who were able to make that trip work so well. And then finally, on July 25th, Colonel Cullen Jones, the 65th Commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in New Orleans District, handed the reins over to Colonel Scotty Otan during a formal change of command ceremony. As a native of Houma, Colonel Otan returned to his roots and served as the 66th Commander of the USA's New Orleans District. Colonel Otan is a 2002 graduate of the United States Military Academy, where he earned a degree in engineering management. Most recently, he served as the Protection Branch Chief and U.S.-NATO Integration Lead at the NATO Joint Force Command in Brunswick, Netherlands. Among his many other missions, Colonel Otan was deployed in 2005 in response to Hurricane Katrina to serve as the Deputy Commander for the Waveland, Mississippi Emergency Field Office. We are thankful to Colonel Jones for everything he was able to do for us during his 3 years in the New Orleans District, and we look forward to continuing the success between CPRA and the Corps under Colonel Otan's leadership. I think I will certainly stand to be corrected, but I think maybe in modern history, this is the first time we've had a commander of the New Orleans District who actually traces his roots back to Louisiana. And by tracing his roots, I mean to go back several hundred years. So I think his learning curve is much shallower than many others, and we are so thankful to have him here. We will hear from him a little bit later today, but please join me in welcoming Colonel Otan. finally, just a piece of internal news from CPRA. Many of y'all have known and worked with Ms. Janice Lansing for many years. After 30 years of faithful service to the state of Louisiana, she will be retiring on September 4th. I unfortunately only had a few weeks to work with her, but it has been an intense few weeks, and she has promised to always take my phone call when I have a question. Janice's impressive career started when she was a student worker at LSU and included stops at the Louisiana Legislature, the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, and the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. She joined CPRA in 2010, and it is, without a doubt, her influence helped set the bedrock of who we are today. The financial management and stewardship of the dollars we've been entrusted to, and helping to define the processes that we operate under today that remain project focused, so that every dollar can be maximized to the greatest extent to deliver projects for the citizens of Louisiana. Janice's imprint will not be forgotten. Please join me in thanking her for her remarkable service. She's not here with us today. Hopefully she's watching online. If you have a chance, please drop her a note and thank her for her 30 years.
Yes, and from the chair, as a state representative in 2004 to 15, past president for 8 years, I worked with Janice and Lansing and CFO of CPRA. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and she will be sorely missed, and we wish her well in her endeavors, and it's been an honor to work with her, and I know she's watching, so I want to say a shout out to her. And she really, really made CPRA in the direction it is today. So one more round of applause. I think she deserves to.
As I conclude my remarks and open up the questions, I'll share a random thought today, as I was probably the second responder to what was likely a fatal accident last night. I was over an hour delayed today by a pretty horrific accident on I-10. And knowing that my middle son will be getting his learner permit this afternoon, I want to wish everyone a safe drive home, not only today, but as we approach the holiday weekend. Please be safe out there. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to also introduce Parish President Keith Hinckley, and along with Parish President Louis Holmes, who's sitting in. And also we have Parish President Matt Jewell, so it's an honor to have all three leaders here in the same meeting. Thank you for coming. And with that, we're going to look at the review of the hurricane and risk reduction storm damage reduction system. Colonel Otak for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'd like to personally welcome also, by the way, he is from Terrebonne Parish, which is a good thing. So, Colonel, I want to thank you and others for putting together a meeting in Grand Isle that Executive Director Mike Hale was talking about with the ASA. I was there along with Governor Landry flew in with Liz Barrow, and of course yourself, and of course we had General Kelly there trying to expedite 15,000 linear feet of beachfront with the rocks, 6 minute breakwater rocks, which has been very successful. So we want to thank y'all for putting that together, and hopefully something could come out of it, maybe a little expediting. With that, Colonel Woltan, welcome.
Thank you, Governor, Ambassador, Chairman Dove, Board, distinguished visitors, guests, and everyone online. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Really, it's to introduce myself, but I think broader is to talk about what is really one of the most important topics, discussions and drivers for growth, innovation, and learning. And so just kind of lay out some Katrina lessons learned, some observations, and then go through that. So thank you for the opportunity to address all of this today. So, Chairman, if you afford me the opportunity, Mr. Harry did a great job there of introducing my military. I was going to take some time and do a little unconventional walkthrough of my family history, and I think that might tell the story of what this post means to me. And so in the early 1700s, the Otans were living on Nova Scotia up in Canada. And Francois Otan was fighting the British off the coast there, skirmishing with them along the banks of Nova Scotia all the way through the Great Lakes. And so his 16-year-old son, Benjamin, watched as the Otans and other family and friends were systemically expunged from Nova Scotia. And so at 16, he boarded a canoe with an Indian friend of his, and he started out on the water across the Great Lakes and all the way down the Mississippi River. So as someone who has a 15, 16-year-old, it's really hard for me to imagine, moving across that great land. Benjamin Otan landed just north of Terrebonne Parish, west of New Orleans, and started the lineage of nearly all the Otans that exist in South Louisiana. And so my family has been here since 1750. Longer than the United States has been the United States. We've lived off the land, we've lived off the river. Fast forward a little bit, my great-great-grandfather, Gibson Otan, was the first Chamber of Commerce president in Houma. He was a business owner, and he understood the importance of what South Louisiana meant to his family, to his businesses. And so as he looked at commerce and he looked at protection of his assets and providing for his family. And so he was a leader of the area, he was a leader of the business, and involved in both Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, but saw the importance of the canal and the movement through South Louisiana to get out to the greater Gulf and moving forward. World War II paused his efforts, but after World War II, he wanted to work with the Corps of Engineers in New Orleans District, and they told him it was going to take a lot of money and too long, and he wasn't having any of that. And so he and other business owners pooled their money together, and they did the feasibility study themselves. They went up to Washington, D.C., and they pitched the Houma Canal to D.C., and the Houma Canal was written into the law, and the Corps of Engineers was asked to execute that canal. And so if you can see at the bottom of my photo there, that's the ribbon cutting of the Houma Canal in 1962. My great-great-grandfather Gibson is the one with the wide brim hat right there, and he was at the ribbon cutting. My family's been deeply involved in South Louisiana. We love South Louisiana. I've come back here, even though I'm in the military. This is what I call home. And so as I travel around the world and people say, "Where are you from?" I proudly say South Louisiana. And so I give you that. It's not my standard military bio, and that's not how we normally introduce yourselves. But I think that's a great way of saying I recognize how important this post is. And it means a lot to me. I take it very seriously. I take my responsibility very seriously. But I have a long lineage of people behind me saying, "Don't screw this up." And so I look to work forward with CPRA, with the state, with the local, with all the agencies. And I'm genuine when I say I want to work with you. Let's find the best way forward. Because I understand my decisions, hopefully my great-great-grandson will be talking about them. And so thank you for the chance to talk about this. Thank you. So what I wanted to do is really open up with what we have in terms of Katrina, the lessons learned, and moving forward. So what you see there on some photos is what we're calling the pre-Katrina New Orleans. There's the way that we built the protection, the hurricane protection system is what we called it. It was incrementally funded between the federal and state level. We were building in increments. We would build the levee wall. At that time, the standard engineering practice was an eye wall that we would build, and it was a system in name only. We did not get the funding that we needed, and we could not close off the system in a way that we needed it. There was also a different perspective of how we would do that. And so we were under the assumption we were using a historic modeling method. Many of you some of you may remember Betsy, many of you absolutely remember Andrew in the 90s. And so we were using a method that would allow the water to somewhat enter and then pump out. And so we were focused on the canals and the pumpings to move the water out. And again, I'll emphasize this was a system in name only. And we were moving forward with that. Construction was always ongoing. We still had a level of effort, even up through the early 2000s, of trying to close this system through incremental funding, but it was an ongoing construction design. What we found is that the city had never really experienced major inundation to test that. And so we were under a false assumption that this system, as it is in the name, could handle any level. We were using at the time Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 modeling. And so we were looking at the Category 3 storm as an ability to protect the greater New Orleans area. When you look at New Orleans, you know, we often hear about it and we talk about New Orleans as a bowl. Well, New Orleans actually really is a bowl. Here's a good profile view of what you see on New Orleans. And so as you had Mississippi doing its tidal flooding, it would deposit the sediments right on the river's bank, which would create a high point. And then you'd have a level of inundation or flooding on the Lake Pontchartrain side, which would also create some higher ground there. And you can see that with the signs for A and B. And then as you think about the key points across the city, you can see some of those lower lying areas looking at the profile view. So we had our Mississippi River and Tributary project design that we were looking at as part of the walls there. And then the avenue could, just along the canals, we would install those high walls there. And the idea again was allow some of the inundation to come in and then pump it out. On 29 August 2005, almost exactly 20 years ago, many of us were watching the news and watched as Hurricane Katrina entered the Gulf and then really started to intensify. Example, or highlighting the importance is the city and all of the Gulf Coast really watched which way Hurricane Katrina was going to go. As it neared landfall, it was a Category 5 storm. Less than 12 hours before landfall. And then as it made its way just east of New Orleans, and so as I mentioned in there, I eventually went to Waveland, and when you looked at eastern Louisiana and western Mississippi, Waving, Mississippi took the brunt of the eye wall, but a significant amount of surge pushing up the tributaries and into Lake Pontchartrain. 127-mile wind when it hit Louisiana, we saw surges of 28 to 30 feet. In Louisiana and along the Gulf Coast. And so, for context, just out of the size of this room plus, right? And think about the height of this room and just a bulldozer of wall pushing into the Gulf Coast. Some of the aftermath. So right here you can see an inundation map that shows just the record surge and wave conditions along the Gulf Coast. Based on that system that was in name only that we talked about, we experienced 53 levee and flood wall breaches. You can see them on your slide deck there on this picture in the stars. The stars annotate exactly where those breach locations occurred. 46 were caused by overtopping and subsequent erosion. And we'll talk about that later as we talk about that eye wall formation. And that was the standard engineering design criteria that we agreed to and used at that time. And so we had a lack of resilience to overtopping. And eventually that water inundation, the lake overtopping, and pushing on all those levee systems as the flood water pushed into it, just gave way and the levees buckled. And so we had the resulting losses and inundation of the cities. The designs for the 17th Street and London Avenue outfall canals, they were, and near IHEC, were inadequate. They weren't. They're learning that now. I'll cover that a little bit later, but you can understand why what we assumed to be a standard engineering practice did not hold up to that level of water inundation and overtopping. 80% of the city was inundated with water, as you can see here. Here's 17th Street Canal, where we had one of the breaks from the levee, water pushing through. Inner Harbor Navigation Canal, inundation of water. You can see some of the barges to the left side of the photo there that had drifted into those neighborhoods. Iconic shots of New Orleans. And so the storm affected everyone in some way, shape, or form in the city as well as along the Louisiana coast, the Gulf Coast writ large. The Superdome itself became an iconic image of the damage and destruction. It was broadcast all over the nation and really amplified the human suffering that we, in some way, shape, or form, either witnessed or experienced ourselves. So here's the problem. And Governor, we're looking right at it. That was the problem that we faced in 2005. Everyone understood the magnitude, the suffering, and the understanding that we had to change. It was time to change together and understand and assess what we needed to do. So what did we do? It was an opportunity for us as an organization, the federal engineering organization, to get back and relook at this through a different lens. And the organization keyed in on three major points of who we are and what we need to do going forward. And so we grounded ourselves that we were engineering focused. And we needed to let the engineering speak for what the right answer was, and let the engineering drive the decision. Towards the synchronized funding and synchronized strategy. So the outcome of that was what we're calling Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System. Right? Many of you know it as HISTERS, and it's a discussion and it's an overall system of systems view for how we're going to do things. We developed the engineering methodology that understood both the modeling and the engineering required, and we had a mandate to deliver it. We were handed fully federal funds incrementally, but fully federal in terms of how it came to us at just over $14.5 billion. We're given a very defined budget and delivery timeline. We will deliver HISTERS within time. As you can see in the end slide there, we were given by 1 June 2011. And I would say that we'll kind of fast forward a little bit. We delivered the project on time, and it was tested in 2012 with Hurricane Isaac. Hurricane Isaac, as many of you remember, was our first real test of the HISTER system and held true to that. This is a fully funded program. We received the money as we needed it, so we were able to work through that. It was in alignment with our local partners and stakeholders. And we worked to deliver a comprehensive program that way. We did not go into this single-minded. We did not go into this as the federal government was the might or right. We pushed forward with our partners to deliver what was needed in the region. As we talked about modeling, we changed the methodology of our modeling and how we did things. And so previously we based it on a category 3, 4, and 5 storms. Which would offer a level of flood inundation and a level of winds. They were singular in focus and did not offer variability for how we looked at that across the system. We modeled 63,000 storms over 152 storm tracks that allowed us to look at this in through a variable way of both floods, winds, and geography of where it would hit. And so then we were able to develop a more comprehensive engineering-based solution that allows to develop this system of systems. I talked about the eye walls before. Here's just a visual view of that. This was part of our learning and going forward. So previously we used the eye wall with a sheet pile in the middle into the core. The top of the eye wall is 6 feet there. Our employee is not 6 feet. She's standing on a little bit of an incline there, but at least gives you a visual reference there of what it was like. These were along the canals, right? As we talk about some of the failures, you can see. And what we found was the pressure of the water and the overtapping would create that one. It would create a gap on both sides, and so that pressure would cause that wall to push in and then you had water inundation underneath and water inundation on the other side. And so that spiraling would cause the wall to continue to eat away and eventually just fall. We moved to what we call a T-wall. You can see here the example of that, right? And we also increased the size dramatically. So the size of the T-walls are 32 feet in elevation. We moved to where it had a stable base, and then we put in T-wall support pilings deeper into the ground. And so that we had a much more stable base. It was able to protect against any pressure. And then we installed splash pads. And so as we talk about a risk reduction system, because as we look at the more violent, the higher storms or the changes of storms, if there is overtopping, we have a splash pad that'll allow that water to push through, so it doesn't eat on the core stability that we have on that backside of that T-wall. We also looked at our design and size and scope of the levees. And so you can see here's a post-Katrina levee from the sky. What I would like to key in on as we do a slide, Bill, is this was what our pre-Katrina levee looked like. And you can see there as we grew, and we looked at the system and what our expectations as we started talking about coastal inundation and flood moving into the region, and then we built to the new levee. It's about a football field in distance. It really gives that stability to stand against the pressure, but then the height. We can grow the height of the levees based on that larger foundation. So what we ended up with was truly a system. We have no longer a system in name, but a system that is looking at it holistically based on the models. In Army terms, what we did was we changed the defense of the perimeter. And so previously, as I talked to you, we let the enemy in and then was going to attack them in our perimeter. Any Army officer can tell you that doesn't make any sense. And so what we did was we pushed our perimeter to the perimeter, and we said we're going to hold the enemy back. All right, we're going to know where we need to pump the water out. We're going to understand our perimeter. We're going to understand it as a system. All right, and we're going to manage and fight that across the echelons as we see that storm fight coming towards our way, whether it's through coastal inundation, through the lake, through the river. We can manage it through this ISR system. I want to also highlight that you might have noticed we wanted to talk about the terminology as well. And so previously we had a flood protection system. And this one is a risk reduction system. And so we, I think, also gained an understanding that this is a partnership at all levels, from the individual all the way up to the federal government. And so there might have been, when you talk about a flood protection system, then obviously your expectation is to protect you. But we had to recognize that this is a risk reduction system. That when you look at the size and scope of the levees and trying to model what level of storm we may get into the future, you're still making assumptions on those sides about the floods or the winds or anything. And so there's still, from individual all the way up to federal, there's a level of risk that exists. And so we were looking to reduce that risk. I'll talk some of that as we go forward, but I want to start to highlight that that's part of that change right now. Each of us have a responsibility within the system, but we at the district level are looking to reduce it at the city-wide and really kind of provide an opportunity to look at it through a lens that maximizes the use of the federal funds to present a system writ large. We'll key in on some of the canals. We talked, I'll just show you, I'll walk through very quickly. As I said, we push those out so that the idea is the city will pump the water into our canal. We will pump them either into the lake or out into the systems. And so here you see this is the newly renovated 17th Street Canal. I showed you the picture earlier there with the break. So now we construction bill. Take a look at the Seabrook Gate Complex and IGC surge barrier. Larger construction. And again, it's about how do we push that out so we protect our perimeter in a way that makes sense. Here's the Seabrook Gate. Allows for navigation, being closed if any concerns about flooding are present. IQC, much larger. Ideas that prevent what we had saw in Katrina, where that coastal inundation into the lake, and really the strong winds from Katrina pushed it into the northern part of New Orleans there, and that pressure against the walls there. Here's a closer look at the sector gate. And then we'll key in down to the West Closure Complex down in the southern part of the city. Wonderful complex, massive feat of engineering, and really impressive what it can do. I'll echo Mr. Harris' comments. If anyone has never had an opportunity to see it in action, please go see it. It really is a great piece of engineering, as well as a wonderful partnership between the federal, the state, all the way down to the local flood protection authorities. And so it's really a good opportunity to see it in action as they're testing those. I'll go back one slide real quick. So I'll go off script. Maybe I was in the Netherlands before this assignment, and if any of you probably can appreciate that the Netherlands are world class in their water management capability. Much like Louisiana, they're under sea level, and they are at constant risk of floods. They served as wonderful partners after Katrina, coming over here and advising and working with and alongside the Corps and the state to advise on the system. And so, having been there the last year, they view this system in Louisiana as world class. They view it as an envious world class system that exists. And so they recognize in the international world community that this is a system of systems, and it's got a great capability to reduce risk along that way. Just some heat maps there as we look at the difference there on our modeling and reducing the risks provided by the system. So what were our major lessons learned? I've hinted at many of these. I wanted to call them out. We are a learning organization. And so we talked about how HISTERS was a system in name only, and we had to change that. And so we took a more comprehensive view of it as a system that had to work in concert across a large geographic area to multiple modeled storms. We knew what we had to ask for. And we went forward and laid out how much that was going to cost and to implement it in a timely manner. We did have to make risk-informed decision making. That was part of our learning. As we talked about changing it from a protection to a risk-informed. But at Echelon, it was about communicating that risk to South Louisiana, to the state of Louisiana, to our agencies, and to our partners. In order to deliver the system, we understood that we had to move in an expedited manner. We were laser focused on delivering this program. There were decisions that we had to make to get it into the ground and to get it set up that we knew that might provide some opportunities or growth to re-engage later, as well as how are we going to build it on a time-phased approach. And so we had to understand we build aspects of it before we built. We couldn't build it all at once, and then we continued to grow that in a risk-informed way. We wanted to make sure we were communicating that risk to the public, much like I explained that here. We wanted to make sure that the public understood that we were installing something that was world-class and that was to the level of the risk that we were seeing from our potential storms and modeling, but there's still residual risk. It still exists, and so we wanted to communicate that on the after effects, the construction side, as well as using of the funds, full use of the 14.6 and what that would deliver to the public. We use professional and technical expertise. We have a phenomenal team inside New Orleans District. I'm very, very proud of them. And then we leverage the USACE enterprise. We leveraged academia. We had multiple colleges that we used modeling, both physical and computer. And then I mentioned earlier the Dutch, as well as other international world water management experts. And so there was no level of hubris or anything. It was, let's get the right people in the room to look at this and make a decision that makes sense. And then I think the greatest lesson learned in my observation, just over my life, but even really in the last month, was just our alignment with our partners. Really, to showcase the importance that there can be no daylight between what our end state is. We may not fully agree with how we get there, and that's where professional dialogue and discussion takes place. But we have a shared vision for how we want to move forward with the projects that benefit commerce, but protect coastal Louisiana, protect inland Louisiana, protect our people. And so those two things are not mutually exclusive, and we can work together to do that. It's a team sport. And we want to highlight that here. This is not all-encompassing. That is what we realized. That, again, I'll emphasize is the greatest lesson learned. But also is buying down risk. So there's a level of risk in everything we do, both from construction all the way through the residual risk. And so communicating that along the entire process is key, and so that we can make risk-informed decisions. And so I'm going to close here and just kind of circle back to my initial comments. This is a great city. This is a great state. We didn't talk too much about it, but the amount of industry, money, and commerce that comes through here. I talk with a lot of folks that aren't from South Louisiana, aren't from the Gulf Coast, aren't from America. And I talk to them about all the benefits that the Mississippi River and the Gulf of America can provide to the people of South Louisiana, the state and the coastal protection. And so when you look at what I would define as the American way of life, a lot of that is enabled by the Mississippi River, the movement of goods throughout the world. And so as you talk to anyone that doesn't live in this state, and you really get to the heart of how they live their lives, their American way of life is enabled by the movement of goods and people and execution of commerce and protection of this. And so why should someone that lives on the West Coast or the East Coast or the Heartland care about the protection of New Orleans and the greater protection of Southeast Louisiana? Because it directly impacts their lives. And they start to see that when we walk through how much happens down here. This is our larger, as we talk about, this is everything that we do. We call this our placemat, right? And so there's no shortage of great projects that we work with our sponsors to deliver every day in South Louisiana. Just some visible shots of West Shore Lake Pontchartrain as we continue to install and active construction along that levee system out there. Working right now. I'll actually head out there in a couple of hours to go look at construction. I'll be on the ground with our team, with our elected officials, and we'll go look at that to see the importance of what this is to the 60,000 residents that live in that area. Against to the Gulf, flew over this with our Assistant Secretary of the Army on PDAS the last week, showcased the importance of what this means along the entire system. Meeting with stakeholders about stressing that. We have some work to do, and we'll continue to work through that to make sure that we can gain better alignment as we look to finish this. Southwest Coastal, New Orleans District was just highlighted as what we're calling the non-structural center of excellence, right? And so this is another tool in our kit as we talk about levees, as we talk about structures that can move, pump, or retain water. We're now adding this to the toolkit of coastal protection and raising homes in a way that will provide a level of protection to those homeowners. This is obviously, industry has been doing this. What we have to do is get some better alignment on the actual engineering. As I told you earlier, we got to get the engineering right, but we're working through it. We've raised one home, which is a 100% increase on the prior efforts of other districts around the nation to do this. But we still have a lot to learn, but we're moving forward. We're hoping that we are moving forward on this and executing and gaining some efficiencies. And so we had an opportunity here, and we're finalizing a negotiation on a Mississippi River Gulf Outlet Design Agreement. We're working with CPRA. I was hoping we have it finalized fully. There's a couple of small widgets we still got to walk through. I think within the next, very shortly, we'll be at a position to where we can sit down and we can formally sign the agreement there between both of our federal and state agencies to execute some designs together. Good news story. We're hoping to do it shortly. I feel very confident we'll sit down together. And lastly, here's our opportunities to keep in touch with us. I tell people, twofold. Please absolutely talk to us, reach out to us, talk to your representatives. Both good and bad news. Reach out and have that. We should be at a position to where, if we believe in everything I just said over the last part of the briefing, then friends have hard discussions. And so there's times where if we need to have a hard discussion, let's have those hard discussions. I invite them because it's about what's the best alignment for us going forward and delivering what's best for the people who live here. At the same time, as you can appreciate, I would ask you to, if you've got a good news story with us, share those good news stories, please. I never want you to restrict, your frustrations at all. Please bring them, but if you're happy or if you're appreciative of what they have delivered, send that up the chain of command as well, so we can continue our funding and alignment. With that, I will yield back to you, Chairman, for any questions or remarks.
Again, welcome, Colonel Lieutenant, and I would be remiss not to say, with Mr. Duran, with the Corps of Engineers, we talk to him about it almost every day, every other day, and we thank him for everything he does, for all the projects across coastal Louisiana, and I believe we have some comments by Lieutenant Governor Willie Nunn.
Colonel, great presentation and welcome and thank you. I'm so happy you're here. Your passion and love for your state is second to none. We used to joke every time a new colonel came in, by the time he found his way to Fouchon in Venice, he was gone. So at least you don't have to find your way around South Louisiana. And I welcome you to come back to Canada every 5 years. We go to the Congrès where hundreds of Louisianans go back and visit with their ancestors and celebrate that those people came to Louisiana. It's a great time. And we just look forward to working with you, and hopefully you can
promise I'm not going to sing. All right, now I will sing. No, I'm kidding. Colonel, welcome. Great to meet you. I just had a couple of things. I do this with every colonel. So my area is sort of south central Louisiana and west. Sadly, this comes up every year. Everybody gets kind of wound up during the hurricane season. But one thing that your team, your predecessors have done really nicely in the wake of Hurricane Rita, I think we're going to drift over to the west maybe next month, is the operation of your lock system to evacuate water after we get inundated. Has been lessons we learned after Rita. Your team, after Hurricane Ike, I believe it was, did an excellent job, and the water went down incrementally faster than it did after Hurricane Rita. So happy to visit with you offline at some point, but I would just encourage you guys to consider that as we enter into this. We're in the grips of hurricane season now. I know there's some challenges with navigation, and as the velocities increase, it's a challenge to continue to move goods back and forth. But your staff in the past really, folks in Southwest owe a debt of gratitude to, because they've done a fantastic job in that. The other thing I just wanted to put on your radar screen and chat a little bit, at some point, maybe perhaps next month, an update on the Rockefeller breakwaters, and maybe you guys can share a little bit. There's been some developments there. There's been some money kind of moving around that everybody's getting a little concerned about. for obvious reasons. And then lastly, perhaps again in September, if we could get a presentation on the Mermentau Basin system, if you will. This, looking at this system that you just so eloquently presented on, we have not a system that doesn't protect near as many people, but from an acreage standpoint, it's critical in how we plan around that whole system. And if there's time and you guys can do something perhaps at next month's meeting, that would be really beneficial, I think, to everyone who would attend in that region. So again, welcome back. Great to have you, and look forward to working with you. Thanks again.
Yeah. And thank you for that. I told my team, whatever Colonel Jones had in place, we're going to keep doing. Right? It's my job to come in here and assimilate to the team, not vice versa. And so, as we'll go back and obviously I'll ask him to give me an update on that, but I thank you for highlighting it. And so the intent is just to continue operations the way that we previously did it, and then we can work with the local and state sponsors. If we need to deviate from there, we'll do that. I'll hand it over to Duran just as a quick update on the other two, and let him give a little more detailed response on it.
Yeah, so on Rockefeller, we're continuing to move that forward. That's going to be our first design build ecosystem project that we're going to do. We're targeting an award by the end of the fiscal year. So we're excited that really advanced that. And want to thank CPRA for their efforts. They did the initial preliminary engineering. Our guys were able to take that. And the most efficient way to execute those funds is to go design build. So we understand that. So the team's moving forward, and that'll be the work by the end of this. Fantastic. Appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Davidson with, DNO.
Yeah, I just have two questions that I want to kind of ask you both, highlighting the risk-informed decision-making and greater alignment with partners. So when it comes to risk-informed decision-making, if we know that a majority of storms that make landfall in the continental U.S. kind of happen in this Brownsville to Apalachicola area, where we are right now, and we know that investing in funding up front prevents us from having to spend another potential up to $100 billion in supplemental disaster funds at a later date. How is that information being used to inform headquarters to continue to provide adequate funding through capabilities to the New Orleans district, but not just New Orleans district, you look at Galveston and Mobile as well? How are we making sure that risk informed, knowing that we're going to have storms in the future, how is that being used to ensure adequate funding, but then also greater alignment with partners? I think probably to the benefit and detriment to the Corps after Katrina, you all proved that you could move extremely quickly with building projects, and a lot of that involved early contractor involvement. And Duran, you just kind of mentioned it with Chad with the design build at Rockefeller. Is that something that y'all are exploring moving forward as it relates to more projects that we have on the district system?
So thank you for that, Mr. Davidson. I would tell you that we still have our statutory requirements as we look at the types of projects. We still have our NEPA requirements as we look at the environmental studies or the environmental assessments to move forward on assessing those projects going forward. That is by law that we move forward. Now, they can waive those in certain instances, or at least look at after the fact mitigation, which is what we did in Katrina. So that obviously is a different level of speed because we're moving something we typically do up front to the end, and we're still addressing that. And so we can move faster on construction, but we're still working through what our statutory requirement is on other ways. A lot of that is driven by federal state disaster declaration or something along the lines there with the administration, how they view it through those priorities. And so there is a level of Fed state combination that we move forward with new starts that go through our assessment program. So I'm not trying to dance around your question. It is a different way of viewing it. And so we viewed Katrina through a different lens in terms of speed, the disaster declaration, and then the ability to move through a different process there to get to construction as quickly as possible. It was also a new law that came down that allowed us to build beyond the previous standards. And so that granted us authority, and then we had funding to move. Ways to go as quickly as we can inside of those authorities in a way that highlights priorities from the New Orleans district as well. I won't speak for headquarters, but I know my fellow district commanders all have their priorities as well. And are out in the ocean now, sorry, not the Gulf. Hurricane Aaron that is having an impact on the East Coast. And so all of those are having greater impacts that need overall for funding has increased. And so headquarters weighs all that, I think, very closely, as well as being a good steward of the dollar, ensure that we're getting the most out of what we're providing on the ground and the quality that we're giving that. I'll give Duran a chance to add or correct me if I said something wrong there, but add to that in a little bit more probably historically nuanced here from the district.
Mr. Davis, I appreciate that question, and you mentioned one word talking about capability, right? That's something that the enterprise remains focused on, I think, across the board. The New Orleans district has done a real good job of highlighting what those capabilities are, sharing that with both partners, non-federal sponsors, as well as the delegates. So that battle rhythm has really helped, as Colonel Lieutenant highlighted, making certain that our priorities are aligned and that our efforts are aligned. So I think that's been a lesson learned that's been carried across the coast. And one thing that I know Colonel Lieutenant's priority is how we tell our story. And I think that's what you're getting to when you're talking about the repetitive loss from storms hitting from Brownsville through the Florida Panhandle. We've got to paint that narrative, and we've got to do a better job of explaining that as we push up projects to the national headquarters level. The right to have the relevance, the so what part, why is that investment there, and that's a potential opportunity for us to find out. So I think those two things in tandem really will get after that, and CPRA, you guys can also help us tell that narrative. You know, as you guys make your congressional visits and engage with our headquarters staff, just talk about the people, the relevance, purpose, and importance of this.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I appreciate that answer. And the last thing I want to say is I know that y'all can't necessarily go out and tell Congress what laws need to change, but we can. So as you continue to communicate the challenges that you have, please make sure we're aware of them, because everybody up here does make frequent visits to visit our delegation, but those outside of the delegation as well. So as we have work coming up and moving forward in the every other year, we're happy to carry the message.
Okay, Mr. Bourgeois.
Okay, so yeah, Dustin covered several things that I was actually thinking of too. Mostly wanted to say that, we know New Orleans is complicated. New Orleans district is complicated. That's why I send the best of the best. So with him, and not that that sets the bar particularly high, but it does. And we've had several meetings already, and I know you've hit the ground running, and I appreciate that. A couple of things that just looking at the New Orleans history system presentation that struck me, which was a great presentation and a testament to what the Corps is capable of doing when everything that Congress put in front of you in the past is operating, right? And that's kind of a point that a lot of the things, and I think few people who don't work as closely as the Corps as we do recognize the layers of issues that have been delivered to Congress by law that you have to develop guidance for and work through. And sometimes over time that guidance gets expanded, and we'd like you to do just like your predecessors did and try to figure out better interpretations of that guidance and still follow the law. But if the law needs to change, then that's something that we work on too. My final statement is that I know last Thursday you flew over Narragansett to the Gulf system on your tour, and I appreciate you guys doing that. But one of the things that you see from the air is things that don't exist. You know, watching this presentation, and I saw some things where you were showing the pre-Katrina levee. There's portions of our future flood protection system that I would sleep better tonight if I had the pre-Katrina levee, right? And so I think I just wanted to make that point again. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for taking on this very challenging role, and anything we can do to support you, we will. And
Yes, President Jewell, St. Charles.
Thank you, Colonel Lieutenant. Welcome. Congratulations on the post. I'd like to say the Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System, also known as HIDRIS, is a very impressive system. We've seen it since Katrina, and since its completion, successfully worked time and time again. Testament to all those who engineered it and built it. As Dwayne mentioned, the Narragansett Gulf system is a very important system, and St. Charles Parish is actually between kind of three systems. We have Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System at the Protect Our East Bank, and I'll currently have 100-year flood protection is the other barrier area of risk reduction system. So that system will eventually tie into the Narragansett system. So really want to plug that we've gotten some money to start some engineering. We'd like to see more progress in the engineering front move forward. More about Stillwater Heights and other modeling that we're looking at to make sure that the parish, which has spent over $100 million in constructing 7.5 level to core standards, is doing everything we can to make sure that the work that we're doing is going to positively contribute to the project that you guys are going to build. And I know that is going to come real soon. So we'll say thanks and make that flood, make sure that we're having that continuous protection all over Jefferson Parish for the pollution cover.
Any other comments? Members? And again, Colonel, thank you very much. You know, I did start a levee system for Vermilion Parish into New Iberia and into St. Mary, all the way to about the Calumet Cut area. So we're all building a system in that area, and I'd like to thank y'all on $5.8 billion word authorization recently done, working with Matthew the Corps, pushing it through, and President Coop and CPRA. Great system, and you know, we'll move forward with it. And we met with y'all a couple of times, so look forward to that authorization also to move forward. But thank y'all very much. Really informative, the presentation. Thank y'all very much. And welcome aboard. Next, we have overview of coastal project, protection project inspection, Brad Ball, CPRA. Mr. Ball.
Good morning, board members, Chairman Dove. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Brad Barth with CPRA, the Operations Division Chief. I want to build off of Colonel Otan's presentation here a little bit and work into more some of the processes post-Katrina that our legislators had a lot of foresight on, put in place for us. And hit upon post-Katrina, obviously, with that disaster, legislature standing up CPRA to be the one entity to help with overall restoration and protection in the coastal zone. But also a lot of other changes that we've seen too, as far as aligning our partners from our levee districts and pulling levee districts together to be levee authorities and such. So I really want to stress on lessons learned Katrina with the 20-year anniversary here of one of the key things that Colonel Otan mentioned. I'm going to echo this, is that partnership with our federal partners, our state partners, and then our local levee districts and parishes. We know in the risk reduction world, in our levees and our levee systems, we're all pushing and pulling on the same rope. we can accomplish great things in our systems. So what I want to focus today is on some of the processes that CPRA undergoes in the operations division in support of our risk reduction features. I'll hit a little bit too on our restoration projects. So if you see up in the map there, the lower dash line, and that's our coastal zone. The upper dash line kind of is a little bit larger. That's our coastal area. And why that's important, I'll hit upon that in a little bit later in the presentation. But again, one entity, our operations group is heavily involved in design, construction, O&M, and inspection, monitoring of our levee risk reduction projects, but also on our restoration projects out in the field, our restoration, our rock shoreline stabilization projects. We also lead the effort on our coast-wide referencing monitoring systems. If you've seen the presentations in the past, approximately about 400 stations basically from Mississippi all the way to the Texas line that collect all the data and information to allow us to update our coastal master plan every 6 years and be able to put the best projects on the map. We also serve the role as the ESF3 function with GOSEP during function events such as hurricanes like Francine last year. I'm going to just go ahead and quickly run through some of the stuff on the operations side that we do inside, and then I'm going to hit more on the project inspection side, the different types of inspections that CPR gets into. Design, obviously on the design front, I'm going to hit upon some of the stuff we have ongoing now, so some of the bigger efforts. So working with the Corps of Engineers, specifically in the Southeast Louisiana area here, St. Bernard, Plaquemines, Orleans, Jefferson, St. Charles for levee lifts for the HISTRA system for both LPV and WVV. Those efforts are getting underway as we speak. New Orleans to Venice. Future dollars here that the Corps is implementing right now through IIJA dollars of continuing to improve that system to get it up to the 50-year future design elevation that we're coordinating with. And then to systems like President Jewell, you just mentioned Upper Barataria, and Morganza to the Gulf, coordinating with Nick Mathern on South Lafourche and others at St. Mary's, basically all over the coast. Construction efforts, obviously we'll get involved on the construction oversight, trips out to West Shore Lake Pontchartrain. We're assisting and working with St. Mary's on their Morgan City ring right now with some pump station efforts and works down there to go down there and review and watch construction oversight there. And then what my main topic is going to be here in a little bit is really getting into levee inspection and hitting upon levee inspection and what the state does, working with both the Corps of Engineers and our local partners there. So we're involved with quarterly inspections, semi-annual reports. I'll hit upon levee inspector training that we offer to our local levee districts and parishes to help them fulfill some of their state roles and duties. And then our technical assistance and damage assessments post-storm. On the inspection and reporting side, mainly controlled by 33 CFR 208.10, which is the criteria for federal inspection of projects. And then also on the RIP, the Rehabilitation Assistance Program, PL 8499. Those level of inspections from initial eligibility to routine and the annual inspection. I think they've got a different terminology for that now, site inspection or field inspection, to the periodic or the formal inspections, and then on the damage assessments that we're involved with. Technical assistance. This is one that we're basically on the clock for. So we coordinate on a regular basis with our local districts and our parishes in terms of any issues that may come up, whether it's an O&M issue, a design issue, a survey issue, what have you, and then into hurricane season for some of the other things that we provide with our SIMS, our Coastal Information Management System, in terms of our levee information management system, which shows all the gate statuses across the coast, and then our hurricane gauge monitoring system, or HGMS. If you remember back at my May presentation prior to hurricane season, that shows all the gauges in one convenient location across the coast as we watch for hurricanes entering into the Gulf of America. Survey capabilities, we have an ability to help assist with surveying, and then obviously with any design, monitoring, testing, and other assistance. letters of no objection. So this is one area that we work directly with the Corps of Engineers and the local districts in terms of providing oversight for construction within 300 feet of a hurricane levee or 1,500 feet of the Mississippi River levee. So we also issue a letter of no objection to those projects. Usually my guys are working hand in hand with the Corps and their 408 team, as well as the local levee districts. And the interesting part I want to point out here is that this process for us is in that coastal area, which is much larger than the coastal zone. And then lastly, I'll hit on real quick is our GO-SEP functions for ESF3. Again, heavily involved on the operations side with our levee districts in terms of running our ASGS system during impending storms to give us insight of the consensus track of what the surge may look like in 1, 2, 3, 4 days out, so we can make operational decisions for gate closures. But also that gives us also the ability to run sensitivities and scenarios. What happens if the storm goes right? Extremely very helpful last year during Francine. If you remember Francine, very, very short notice to turn around and make decisions for our local partners. With that guidance and that system, we were able to continue to scenario and run our analysis to the right to have a good insight for what might happen and allow us to make those last minute decisions for some of the larger gates, which then involve the Coast Guard. And then next I'm going to go ahead and really dive in a little bit more detail on the different type of project inspection work that we do. And I want to primarily focus in on the levee side, but I'd be remiss if I did not hit upon the restoration side, because we all know the green stuff in front of our levees, in front of our protection features, our hard structure, our flexible structure are very, very helpful for what we do for maintaining our coast, our working coast, and our constituents. So I'll hit a little bit on that. But I'll hit construction to the O&M inspection, or levee inspections, most people know it. I'll go a little bit more detail on the technical assistance, and then post-damage inspections. So construction site visits. So CPRA is involved in all of our federal projects with the Corps of Engineers. It's typically we would be the non-federal sponsor for these projects in coordination with our local partners. West Shore Lake Pontchartrain, perfect example with Pontchartrain Levee District, St. Charles Parish, overseeing and helping be out there during construction on these projects and overseeing this massive effort as these segments start to come online. I'll spend a little bit of time on O&M inspection in terms of levees. There's been a little bit of some information in the newspaper lately, and I want to assure you that the federal government and the state and locals know what they're doing when it comes to levee inspection. 3 different kind of laws, acts, or statutes that really kind of control what we do on the levee inspection front. First off, 33 CFR 20810. So this will define your regular 90-day or quarterly type inspection reviews, and also your semi-annual reports that get provided back to the Corps of Engineers in the process for federal projects. On the state side, Louisiana Revised Statute 49214.6.3 gives kind of our criteria for other hurricane protection projects. So it's more of a every 5-year type inspection oversight of post impact from a storm. And then lastly, to kind of fold into this mix is the RIP program of the Corps. So PL 8499, which gets into your annual or your site visit inspections and your formal inspections, and then your damage assessments. So you roll all this together, and basically you have a lot of criteria and requirements there for inspection. And one thing I want to point out with our local sponsors, whether it's Plaquemines Parish or Sliff East or Sliff West, focusing on Katrina and this region area, these guys are on the ground every day, inspecting, mowing, maintaining these systems. So they have eyes and ears on the levee system on a regular basis. Often we talk about the mowing cycle to mow these levees and how they can improve the mowing cycle on here. And some of them are getting down to 4 to 6 weeks from start to finish, from top to bottom, over hundreds of miles of levees. So you literally have folks looking at every square inch of levee has been mowed. A lot of these guys are certified inspectors. One thing we also offer here at CPRA too, also as a requirement for levy officials, districts, and parishes, is also to have levy certification. So we offer our levy inspector certification. You can go to coastal.la.gov under resources and click on levy inspector certification and sign up and take online coursework there. I think there's a 2-year requirement on officials there for maintaining that level of training. So that's one thing that the state does offer as well. Technical assistance. So these types of inspections or site visits, we work closely hand in hand. I'm going to throw out another example here that just came up here recently, right in the heart of hurricane season, and give a shout out to Plaquemines Parish and Kimberly Buck on NOB 14. If you're familiar with that, that's a sector gate about 50 some feet wide. It's right on the Mississippi River there at the Empire Waterway. We will have some siltation issues associated with that gate in the river, and we were unable to operate that gate here coming into hurricane season. So with the quick actions of Parish President Hinckley and Kimberly Buck, they were able to get a contractor mowed out there and get the gate dredged and get it operational again. So again, example of us coordinating with the parish and the Corps of Engineers to keep them in tune with their operations and their emergency group in terms of what we're prepared for and how we're handling stuff. Because at this time of year, we all know that a storm could pop up in the Gulf, and we could have a storm, barreling down us within 72 hours. Other technical assistance that may be less of a rush. So maybe it's a slight O&M issue where we have some noise when we operate the gate. An armored flood gate is an example where we're working with SLIFA East on, and we'll go out there and look at that gate quite a bit, coordinate with the Corps, and try to troubleshoot some areas on that gate that may have some O&M considerations there on how that gate operates and functions. So we are heavily involved. We will usually prepare the RTAs through the request for technical assistance from the locals to provide to the Corps to engage us and the Corps and the local for overall solutions for anything from routine O&M to something a little bit more significant. Lastly, post-impact inspections. So after a storm has come through and the dust is settled in terms of access and safety for getting crews and people mobilized out to get eyes and ears on the levees, CPRA will coordinate directly with the Corps and their teams as well as our local levee districts. And so, for example, after Francine, some folks like Morganton the Gulf were on the ball in terms of getting some drone footage out there and getting those levees assessed very, very quickly. SLIFA East, SLIFA West, and Plaquemines is very, very similar, where we were able to mobilize crews, vehicles, and teams out there to cover all of those stretches of levee to assess for any major damages. Because really what we're looking for here is something that's impacting our system that really needs to be addressed in a short period of time since we're in the middle of hurricane season. So we need to know those types of items so we can make sure we can have anything addressed if we get a situation where we have a Katrina and then a Rhea right behind it. Flip it over a little bit to the non-protection side, to the restoration side. As we build our restoration projects, our marsh restoration projects, or shoreline stabilization projects, whatever they may be, those projects are usually 20-year design lives. So not only will we have inspection during the construction to ensure payment for the contractor, that he's building it correctly and so forth, but then we're also getting into the monitoring inspection. A lot of our projects will ultimately have around a 20-year life that will require annual inspections to evaluate the performance. What are we seeing in terms of settlement subsidence? What are we seeing in terms of the project template? What does the elevations look like? What are the water levels doing out in this area? And specifically, in a lot of the cases for our restoration projects, how is the vegetation holding up and what does it look like overall. So again, not necessarily on the protection side, but equally critical on the restoration side to help protect what we're investing in on our hard structure for our flood risk reduction plans. And that's what I have to present for y'all today. So with that, Chairman Dove, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boss. Any questions, any comments? Quick question, Mr. Bourgeois.
Not so much a question, but a comment. Thanks to you, I look around the audience and CPRA, their wide depth staff and things that support the local levy districts. And one of the things we were talking about just recently is having the levy districts having access to the web UOC as part of our emergency response efforts. I think I know right now we have to go through the parish, and that adds a layer of complications, a layer of communications that we simply do not need and cannot afford when we're trying to recover. So I appreciate you taking the effort to work with us and go SEP because we will put in our requests and then I have to go and call you guys anyway to fix where it was going in the wrong direction. And so I do appreciate that. I ask the support of this whole board in having that access directly from into the web EOC by the levy districts. And hope I never need it, but sure will. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Ball.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, the coastal parish perspectives, looking back and looking forward, Jefferson Parish, Michelle Gonzalez. Welcome.
Is that good enough? No, don't feel like, you don't hear? Oh, sorry.
No.
Okay, a little bit closer? Is it all right, thanks, Ed.
Yes.
All right, so is it still morning? Yes, good morning, CPRA board members and attendees. Thanks so much for inviting the parishes to come today. So I just took a few moments to take a look at what a 20-year anniversary is. Just a quick Google search. I saw that most times it's called a porcelain anniversary due to its delicate yet enduring nature. So, Katrina, Rita, each of our community and state have displayed look at the depth. In our work here with Jefferson Parish over the past 18 years, aspect, I've seen firsthand the love our citizens and workers have for the place that we call home. Evacuation call. Further, these stations, all of our stations are equipped with SCADA equipment, which allows for remote operation should that be required. Most of these pump stations are manned 24 hours a day as well. One of the interesting facts I learned is that they even have resident houses for a lot of the pump station operators that are within, like, some of them just across the street or down the road, and that's kind of a perk of the job. So I think that that's really an interesting upgrade that we've done in Jefferson to make sure that our pump stations are manned. There's been major canal projects in some of the larger canals. To name a few would be the Elmwood, Suburban, Soledad, Kehoe, and Industry canals. The pump stations themselves have been upgraded. The one that you see on the screen there is the Harahan pump to the river, which is the idea that we would be pumping rainwater to the river as opposed to the lake, getting that water out as fast, closer to where it actually falls. Altogether, our drainage team manages nearly 1,500 miles of subsurface drainage, 194 pumps, 340 miles of drainage canals and ditches. All of this infrastructure certainly leads to challenges with maintenance, upkeep, staffing, and training, which the department recognizes and prioritizes annually. Some of the items that we are looking at moving forward with our internal drainage system is studies for both the east and west bank of the parish, which identify current problem areas and begin new phases of projects coming in the future years. The next department and kind of function that I wanted to look at is certainly our floodplain management program and where we've come with that since Katrina. We've actually seen great success. This department was created in 2013, just a few months after the risk reduction system was actually certified and the parish was issued updated flood insurance rate maps. I will say personally, I attended countless meetings with citizens explaining flood insurance rate maps and what it meant to be an X zone or an AE zone or what a base flood elevation was. Ultimately, the maps were finally adopted in 2018, and that resulted in nearly half of our housing stock in Jefferson Parish showing less flood risk. One of the great challenges that came from that we still have is that has resulted in nearly 30,000 flood insurance policies being not renewed. Several reasons why people drop flood insurance. One, it's too expensive. Another, because the mortgage company says it's no longer required. Just as we saw the Colonel talk about, it's a risk reduction system. So we do a lot of work with trying to educate citizens that flood insurance is still one of their best options whenever it comes to making sure that their most valuable asset is protected. A lot of that we do through the community rating system program, and we receive credit for that. Another great thing that I wanted to just kind of mention there is that Jefferson Parish has received information from FEMA that we are upgrading our class rating. We were a CRS class 5 community, which received a 25% discount. Sorry, a 30% discount. We are now got my numbers wrong. 25% discount. We're now moving to a class 3, so we are improving by 2 classes, and we'll be receiving a 35% discount come this October. They are freeboard throughout the parish. Some of that came with the updated building code that the state had, but then also outside levy, all structures are either elevated or newly built or 2 feet above the base flood elevation, giving those the idea that they would have less risk from flooding in the future. We also have strongly prioritized non-structural mitigation like no other community that I've experienced. Jefferson's elevated just over 1,900 structures since 2006 through grants, partnerships with FEMA, GOSEP, CPRA, and the CDBG program. This has made it to where a lot of the landscape of communities look different. The house that you have on the screen is actually a house in the town of Lafitte, which had a lot of slab on grade houses, and now these houses sit anywhere from 8 to 11 feet above the ground, with access being also with stairs, ramps, handicap elevators, just really changing the way that people's houses look and as they're built in the future. There's still a lot of work to be done on this front. We have nearly 400 structures that are pending approval for FEMA grants. Hopefully they are approved within the next few months and will be implemented over the next 2 years. Additionally, after studying the performance of homes after Hurricane Ida through our program, we added a feature in all of our Hurricane Ida grants where we would include wind mitigation for structures that were in the grant programs. The idea there is that we saw a lot of homes that had problems with their roofs and windows and railings, and we want to make sure that we're giving these homes the best chance of fighting through wind and flood events. All right, the last department that I'll focus is certainly, last but not least, I want to talk about our coastal management efforts. The parish has long been an advocate for coastal endurance, with helping to start the PACE program in the past, implementing the Christmas tree recycling event for more than 30 years, and advocating for initial phases of the long distance sediment pipeline projects. In the 2016-2017 timeframe, the Department of Coastal Management was officially created as the parish was looking at funding streams that would be available and wanted to have a central place for project planning. A strategic action plan in 2020, which it's nearly update. The 5-year update is should be on our website next month. And then some of the successful grant applications that we've partnered with our Go Mesa funds are highlighted on the screen. One of them is actually a terrace project that I just got a video from our design firm that construction started today. They've turned over the first bit of mud to create those terraces, so we're very excited with the partnership with NIFWIF and our Go Mesa funds to bring that project to life. We can see this as a great case study for the Barataria Basin and how these lower cost projects can really start to make a difference. Another project that we've brought to life over the past few years is the Bucktown Living Shoreline Project. Again, it's just looks like a blob of mud there, but in the background you see the Lakeway Towers, and it goes from Bucktown to Bonneville. This is a project that has seen a lot of challenges with soil, with building right behind a levee, a stream of breakwaters, subsidence, but we're confident that moving forward, this project is going to be a great showcase as through the coming years. And then I certainly can't talk about Coastal Jefferson without mentioning Grand Alamo feed areas. Certainly my office is thrilled with the partnership that we have with these areas and Mayor Carmodell and Mayor Kerner in the past, and now with Mayor Crane. The area of the state, we certainly want to see. This area has rising seas and just a lot of problems, as you're all aware. In Grand Isle, a lot of the priority projects that are moving forward, I'll simply hit on a few of the priorities that they have. We've got pump stations that would better drain the residential areas. We're using some of our current restore dollars to install these pump stations. So we have one pump station that should be completed in this October, and then by next hurricane season, our goal is to have another 3 pump stations installed. So we should have those out to bid by the end of this year. And then the Grand Isle has really been working on their back levees, restoring Fifi Island with money from NIFWIF to design that. And as they mentioned earlier, installing breakwaters along the entire Gulf front is a huge priority. In Lafitte, we're optimistic to finalize the design and permitting of each of the levee segments and move to construction with each phase to provide the protection for evacuation route and for individuals' properties. The last project I'll touch on is the West Barataria Corridor and the Marsh Creation projects. Much of the parish's Go Mesa money was invested in these projects to pump river sediment to the western side of the Barataria waterway. We are encouraged by CPRA's interest in these projects moving forward and hoping for a partnership to bring these projects to life. So I'll close by reminding each of us that we're continually learning how to live with water that surrounds us, and some of the greatest work we do is to educate citizens and residents of this area of the beauty but the risk that comes from this water that surrounds us. This QR code that I have here leads to a video that the parish made a few years ago, and in the past year we have released a 8th grade curriculum that goes with done several teacher workshops, and so anybody who, if you just snap up the QR code, obviously don't make it go live here with lots of noise, but reach out to me in the future. We'll certainly would love to link up and share the curriculum with anybody who's interested.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions? From the chair, I'd like to thank you. And you know, you talked about telemetry and SCADA as parish president for 8 years. You know, I took all the old pump stations we had, 50, well, it was 60, it was about 70 to 58 of them I put telemetry and SCADA. Great job on that. I think every pump station should be telemetry and SCADA cost its cost. And we built 30 new pump stations, and that's definitely all telemetry and SCADA. And of course, you know, the diesel pump stations, we did put backup generators. We didn't even have transfer switches. So the drainage system is so important, and cost it terrible. And we went mostly electric on everything on all the new pump stations, and some of the old ones had it. And you know, I've got an old saying: you can't build a levee too high, you can't build too many pump stations, or too large a pump station. So good job, and on the Grand Isle on the back levees and pump stations, I was on Grand Isle the other day, and I know that's moving along with the engineer on back, and we're working with y'all on that. And we just happened to meet, myself and the executive director had met with the levee board and Senator Pat Connick on Goose Bayou Basin, and we're very, very close to finalizing and moving forward with that levee system around what they call Goose Bayou, which I know you're very familiar with. So, you're very active and we enjoy working with you. Thank you very much. Okay, next, Pauline Parrish, Austin, Bellbone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Likewise, I just want to share a couple of perspectives from the City of New Orleans, Orleans Parish, and some of the things that we've been working on in the last 20 years to continue the progress that we started with the founding of the CPRA board, if I can. All right, briefly, I want to cover some of the work we've been doing around resilient buildings, some of the ways we've been partnered with the CPRA in recent years to advance coastal flood protection. Some of our interior challenges, the levees protect us from the Gulf, but of course, that highlights the challenge that the Colonel mentioned earlier, that we experience extreme rainfall and it floods from multiple sources in the city of New Orleans. And I'll talk about some of the science and coordination that we're doing on that end as well. Briefly, this is a slide representing the complex of plans that the city of New Orleans has developed in the last 20 years to reduce the consequences of a storm like Hurricane Katrina from happening again. So not only through structural and non-structural risk reduction, but also through integrated emergency planning. We've got a robust framework and a robust team in place to manage future disasters and prevent those outcomes from happening again. When it comes to resilient buildings, immediately following Hurricane Katrina, the city adopted an advisory-based flood elevation while we're working through the process with the state and Corps to revise our flood insurance rate maps. So those higher standards include additional freeboard, a foot within the levee's protection system, two additional feet if you're outside of it, as well as some of those coastal design standards outside of the levee system. And what we see is that over the last 20 years, whether that's through private redevelopment investments or through state and locally managed mitigation and elevation grants, we've seen a drastic reduction in the risk profile of our neighborhoods. You look across Broadmoor, some of the more low-lying and flood-prone areas where we've got a long record of flood losses. Those have come down in recent years because we're making incremental progress through the city's, participation in FEMA's flood mitigation assistance grant programs and other efforts. We're also, the city of New Orleans faces a unique challenge in this area that perhaps no other city in the country does, with our need to balance historic preservation and cultural integrity with risk mitigation. And so that's something that we've got a lot of expertise in. And like I said, we've seen a lot of progress in the kind of flood insurance claims that we see when we get these urban flash floods. On the screen, you'll see the Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club Lounge. That's the first non-residential project that we've done with mitigation grant dollars in the city. That's a nationally historic registered building and an important cultural institution. And I wanted to highlight that because of the Lieutenant Governor's here. And the city's, we recognize the importance of preserving our arts and cultural institutions as part of our resilience. And construction on that's going to be done next month, hopefully. Now, in recent years, we've been expanding the way the city partners with the CPRA in chasing competitive and discretionary funding to advance some of the projects that are in the Coastal Master Plan and in the Corps' MRGO Restoration Plan that also align with our city priorities. This is the part of the New Orleans East Land Bridge project. In 2019, we secured NIFWIF dollars and partnered with CPRA to take this project, this increment of that larger master plan project, through to 30% design. As I understand it, we're still pending further NERDA dollars or other money to advance that project through to complete design and get it into construction. This is a huge priority for us as well as the rest of the Pontchartrain Basin Foundation because of the criticalness of this landform in preserving the dynamics between Mississippi Sound and Lake Pontchartrain, as well as buffering storm surge. We're currently working with the partners you'll see listed here with funding both from NOAA and NIFWIF to take the Bayou Bienvenue Restoration Project, also a master plan project, also part of the MRGO Restoration Plan, to the 60% level of design. This has been a challenging kind of thorn in our heel for years because it's inside the histories, because it's inside the urban landscape, and we're challenged to get additional mineral sediment in to build this restoration project. So we've brought our partners in and we are making an earnest effort to come up with look at all the work that's been done over the decades and come up with a path forward to see this restoration project through. This is important not just because of its important role in the fisheries and ecosystems of the Pontchartrain and Breton Sounds, also because of its connection to the people of New Orleans. When we built the levees, we walled the community off from the city, and we have very few public access points in the city to connect back to our coastal landscape and ecosystem. To that end, we've dedicated a large part of our restore dollars through the direct component to the redevelopment of Lincoln Beach. It's one of 2 historic beach access points in the city of New Orleans. And we've prioritized this. You can see there's some remnants of the historic structures. We developed a master plan for what we'd like to see in terms of recreational and economic opportunity at this site, and tomorrow we'll be reviewing 30% design plans. So we look forward to seeing this through. We've got some funding developed, but we look forward to working with our partners to identify additional resources to make this a reality. We've heard talk earlier today about the investments in the canal closure and pump stations. I'll also mention the canal improvements that have been implemented through the SELA program, and those have made a huge difference and an improvement in our internal drainage system. They've also created new challenges. So as we move water from some parts of the city and speed up our ability, increase our abilities to convey it to the pump stations, that's created new problems and back flooding challenges in the downstream parts of the basins. So we are continuing to work through some of the SELA projects on the West Bank, and there are additional SELA projects kind of bookshelved or on the shelf. In particular, some of our major pump upgrades that as we continue to advance our engineering and our understanding of the internal workings of our drainage system, we're understanding better and better where additional pump capacity will be needed, or where we can address it through smaller pipe upgrades or green infrastructure improvements and stormwater retention within the city. We've completed a number of green stormwater retention projects across the city. We've got a number of other projects in various stages of engineering and design. And we'll continue in the coming years to develop new projects at the more and more granular neighborhood scale. Currently under construction is kind of a keystone of the post-Katrina vision, the urban water plan that was developed in the years following the storm. This is the Mirabeau Water Garden project. It's repurposing a historic site donated to the city through FEMA's FMA, flood mitigation assistance, and BRIC programs. We've got 2 neighborhood scale projects in design in the 9th Ward and in Algiers that have been co-conceived with neighborhood partners, and in the next year or so we'll be completing the engineering and design on those projects. We've also, through city-led initiatives, conducted high-level, high-resolution drainage studies in certain neighborhoods across the city that have resulted in us scoping a number of additional green and gray drainage improvements that we'll be seeking to implement in coming years. Similarly, we're looking to repeat that process. We're taking a note from some of the technical expertise piloted and demonstrated by the Watershed Initiative and by CPRA's planning processes. And we're looking to develop some stormwater master planning efforts locally as well. We've got some dollars allocated through our IDA recovery funding and some other sources, but we have additional funding needs to really scale that up. And what we're looking to do is to do high resolution neighborhood scale modeling to better understand the nature of our urban flooding challenges and come up with best standards of practice so that we can maintain those models in the future, reproduce them, steward them, and have technical excellence behind our planning tools that we utilize locally. And finally, in support of that, in the last several years, we've been implementing remote flood sensing technology using telemetry. We've got a dense network of both water level sensors and rain gauges across the city currently. And we've got really unprecedented visibility when flash floods occur within the city, the moment that we start to see water collect in the street, we've got alerts coming to public safety. We get road safety apps, and we are working kind of in the R&D phase to the public through our work on developing real-time flood mapping capabilities for the city. And we will, in the future, be leveraging that data set to improve and calibrate those flood models I was just talking to. I'm really looking to carry our planning efforts into the 21st century. We've got remaining challenges, of course. We look forward to continuing our partnerships with this organization as well. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to any questions if there are any.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Thank you for the presentation. One thing I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the need for additional funding in certain aspects. What does Orleans Parish currently do with their donation funding?
Our donation funding has largely been leveraged as non-federal match funds for various drainage projects so far.
Okay, just want to check, because I know that there's, I think, FY 24 is about $2.2 million that Orleans Parish has received. So just want to ask that and see if there's any other ways to leverage that.
Thank you.
Yes, President Matt Jewell.
You mentioned the SEAL program. I know that's a program that Jefferson Parish has utilized a lot. How much money have y'all received from SEAL since its inception?
I'll be frank with you, sir, I don't know.
You have a question? Oh, yes. So, Mr. Carr.
Just a couple of questions.
Yes.
Okay. In regards to CCT, I live in the neighborhood of that there are a number of vacant lots that are in the city. I know that a lot of vacant lots. Overgrown grass.
Yes, sir, specifically in Venetian Isles.
Any other questions? Here done. Thank you very much, Mr. Felbo.
Thank you.
And Clackamas Parish, Kimberly Buck. And Parish President Steve Hinckley. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, committee members, thank you so much for having Clackamas Parish here to discuss this very memorable event. I'm Kimberly Buck. I'm the Coastal and Levee Director. And of course, I have with me Clackamas Parish President Keith Hinckley. Also, Lieutenant Governor, President Hinckley, I know y'all are gonna commentate on this, so just jump on in whenever you'd like. Here we go. As we know, Hurricane Katrina made landfall in Clackamas Parish as a Category 3 storm, causing widespread devastation throughout the parish. Katrina's eyes passed down directly over the southern part of the parish and brought maximum sustained winds of 125 miles an hour and up to 19 feet of storm surge. Long-term recovery had been a complex and challenging process. Hurricane Katrina inflicted substantial damage to all 21 pump stations, with 8 requiring major repairs involving rebuilding and replacement of key components. significant efforts were made to rebuild and storm-proof our pump station. This involved not only repairing damaged components, but also implementing measures to ensure that operability was always going to be available during and after any storm event. I'm impressed. No one said a word yet. Plaquemines Parish experienced widespread destruction from storm surge and storm waves that overtopped and eroded levees, causing flooding with water levels reaching very high points. With the help of local, state, and federal partnerships, 2 of the 3 levee breaches were repaired and large-scale projects implemented to strengthen the entire hurricane protection system. Through coastal bond expenditures, the parish was able to make significant investments. A 12-year coastal restoration plan was developed, consisted of 3 phases. Phase 1, coastal protection and marsh and levees. Phase 2, wetland habitat improvements. And Phase 3, shoreline restoration of barrier islands. The CPRA has been instrumental in the successful implementation of our restoration plan. Extensive work by CPRA's efforts involved a multi-pronged approach, including marsh and ridge creation, levee and shoreline protection, and working with partners to address the complex challenges of coastal restoration for Plaquemines Parish. Marsh creation and shoreline protection. This project includes the restoration of a historical ridge and flanking marsh, creating new wetland habitat and reducing wave energy. The Lower Barataria Land Bridge East is another project that will enhance storm protection. This project focuses to create and restore marshland and reduce erosion, creating 6,900 acres of marsh, 130,000 feet of shoreline revetment, and channel ornering to reduce total tidal prism to create wetland habitation. Despite the significant loss and disruption, the spirit of our community remains unbroken no matter what storm comes our way. We are determined to rebuild and revive always. And Chairman, I turn it back to you for any questions.
Lieutenant Governor, Billy Nungesser, do you know anything about Plaquemines?
Well, Kelly, thank you. Keith, thank you for your efforts. You know, I go back, Keith, when you were on the council, and we had gone to Vicksburg and partnered with the Corps of Engineers there and paid them $250,000 to come up with a plan outside the levee system, because if we raise the levees anymore in South Plaquemines, you take out all the people. And the berm that was actually designed 1,000 feet, 8 foot to the marsh, taught us that marsh creation is not going to lower storm surge, that you've got to build elevation. And I commend Lori Gov and the team at CPRA, since they've taken over looking at these land bridges and elevation that will really lower storm surge. Because the marsh creation, as a matter of fact, when we ran the storm surge models in Vicksburg and showed that 1,000 foot berm, 8 foot to the marsh, lower storm surge 8 to 1 over a mile of marsh grass. And the lady at the score called it scary good. And so identifying those ridges and islands that are sustainable to build those islands and lower storm surge. And part of our 3-stage plan, actually, President Obama approved the berms to keep the oil out the marsh on the outer Bear Islands, where we would have never got a permit had it not been for that emergency And that at the time was the largest coastal project ever, to build those berms to keep the oil out the marsh, because we could pick it up off the beach and not out the marsh. And I remind everyone, as we continue to fight to permit these projects, that permit was issued in 19 days, the largest coastal project ever. And the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation said Plaquemines Parish was going to destroy the coast because they moved too quickly. And then after the oil spill, the Lake Pontchartrain Basin wrote an article that said the silver line of the oil spill was the berms built to keep it all out the marsh. Because now we can build on that, hopefully one day rock it and sustain those berms and be the first line of defense. Because I'll mention one last thing, when we look at coastal restoration now, we got to look at storm surge reduction. And when you talk about the 100-year protection for New Orleans, we all know sea rise is rising. We all know the wall around New Orleans is sinking. And unless we build land out there, worse than Katrina, 10 years from now, when we run those new storm surge models, New Orleans will lose 100-year protection. Where would we get the billions of dollars to raise the flood walls? But if we build enough land outside of the 100-year protection and keep pumping and dredging and building land, as we run those storm surge models, storm surge will go down every year and not go up. And so we will become, our rates of insurance will go down. As a matter of fact, in the coastal project that Plaquemines put together, there's a letter that took us 3 years to get Craig Fugate at the time, head of FEMA, to write a letter to Congress that says we will now recognize things other than levees and flood walls if they're certified by the Corps, which is the Plaquemines berm. So you build that outside the levee system, and it lowers storm surge 5 feet to the levees. Those levees in South Plaquemines come 100-year protection without spending $50 a yard on clay. You do it with $3 sediment out the river. So looking at all those things, and I applaud CPRA for starting to look at projects, not just at marsh creation, but let's build larger berms and ridges. And this all started from an old time that it took us out in the mouth of the river after Katrina. And at South Pass, he showed us the ridge where the only cattle survived Katrina out of 2,000 head of cattle. And I told Earl Armstrong, so what? He said that berm was built to an elevation of 7, 8 feet before Hurricane Betsy, and it's still there. So we can build these ridges higher, wider, plant trees. They're going to get beat up, but they'll be there after a hurricane. I think in Plaquemines Parish, we identified $1 billion that was built that disappeared before a hurricane. And we've got to make sure, no offense to the consultants here, but the consultants get to design it over and over again. We need to start designing stuff that's going to last through a hurricane, or be there so we keep adding. We don't lose these projects, creating 2-foot marsh that disappears in a short period of time. Thank you for your presentation.
One thing I kind of pride myself in is a screenshot that I have of the day I drove out on Spanish Pass. I shared this with Chairman Doug. There's a blue dot that's in the middle of the bay. We're 2.5 miles off Tidewater Road. I drove my truck out there. That's real land that we're building with this right here. And it's land that you can drive on, obviously, because there we were that day driving out on it, 2.5 miles. That was only halfway out. It took us going another 3 miles. So thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, from the chair, the one thing about dredging is start building acres immediately, the day it's running. Spanish Pass is a great example of the phase 1 of success, because, we just moved into phase 2 with the governmental agreement with the back and cash, and I appreciate y'all working with CPRA. And of course, the little back there, our land bridge, that's been on the master plan for 12 years, back on, and Blackman, Jefferson, the food, they all found the package, they do this and that, from constantly, And we look forward on this project with y'all. We want to protect your power and our power.
Like I said many times in public meetings, is that when Blackman's Parish is there and lobbying for land restoration and coastal restoration projects in the parishes that you just listed out. And Chairman Dale, I want to thank you because Billy and I worked years ago with 05, and these projects, with these land bridges, are exactly what we were talking about from '05. So here we are 20 years later, and it's finally coming to fruition. So thank you.
And to add to that, you can, you do it with foundation.
Yes, yes, sir.
If you have a foundation you want to achieve, you could do it with grant.
Yes, and that's what's been out there on some certain. So thank y'all.
I think we have President. No, they said it's distract them all. Would you like to? Okay, well, what do welcome to if you'd like to. You can just. Okay. St. Charles Parish, President Badger. And while he's moving to the chair, I'd like to thank, Ian, Debbie, me, Ryan, and Todd for putting this together and streaming at the board meetings, and, they also have a happy birthday, Debbie, when you have that day. Happy birthday, Debbie. Will you sing for the song? This is 21 years. Okay, thank you, President Badger.
Thanks, Chairman. Glad to report about the happenings of St. Charles Parish post Katrina, and give you guys an update on what's been done and where we're going. First, I mentioned this earlier in my comments to the Colonel, that St. Charles Parish is kind of situated between a few levee alignments. So obviously, the red hatch you can see there is part of the HISDRA system, which we have talked about. That's that $14.6 billion system that's protecting multiple parishes. And then the green hatch on the west bank of the parish there is also the HISDRA system that protects us on the south side of the Mississippi River. Over there in yellow is what's ongoing right now. That's where the Colonel's out going to meet with congressional leaders about the West Shore Hurricane Protection Levy that protects a small portion of St. Charles Parish, the Muntz community. Both of those levees, the Hurricane Storm Risk Reduction System and West Shore, both tie into either side of the Bonnet Spillway, as you can see on the top of the screen. In blue was the shameless plug that I made earlier about the Upper Barataria Risk Reduction System. That's an alignment I'll talk a little bit more about here. I don't have it on this screen here, but on the later screen you'll see how that will tie in with each parish. This is a busy slide, but it just kind of shows you some of the major milestones that we've had over the past 20 plus years, where we started in earnest with the issuance of our environmental permits for our Magnolia Ridge levee in 2002, and kind of the timeline of where we've come all the way up to 2025. So this has been, our levee systems in St. Charles Parish have been ongoing for some time now. Okay, on the left-hand side, the kind of red slide, as you can see, our West Bank Hurricane Protection Levee alignments. These are some of the proposed alignments that ultimately, on the right, is what we ended up with. That was what is in the Corps' chief report, so that is the unparalleled alignment, at least in St. Charles Parish. But you can see how it was kind of a phased approach, and we had several different alternatives that were proposed. These were some of the conditions for levee construction that were on the ground, kind of where we had to work, very similar to what you've seen in the West Shore Hurricane Protection Levee. And then you can see there on the left, our Willow Ridge levee completion. You can see a couple of pump stations, the Willow Ridge pump station, our frontal T-wall that we did on the Willowdale pump station. Both in all of our stations, Chairman, our SCADA and telemetry, I know it's something we talk about often. A few more projects, different reaches of levee. This is the Ellington levee, completed in 2018. Our Ellington pump station was completed in September of 2020. A project that we recently completed, the frontal protection of an existing pump station, Kellogg pump station. The Magnolia Ridge levee lift. The Magnolia Ridge levee existed, but we had to lift and reconstruct it to core standards. And that was completed in 2021. Our Magnolia Ridge pump station completed in 2020, and then recently Parity flood control structure, which was completed in 2023. The Parity structure is what ties our Magnolia Ridge levee into our Sunset levee. It gives us continuous protection along the west bank. Some projects that are under construction right now. On the west bank, we have our Crawford Canal expansion and our Sunset Pump Station on our stream cleaner project. This project is going to be finished later this year or next year. And that is giving us automated water stream to a pump station that has over 5,000 acres of watershed that flows to it. So we get everything from huge logs. And there's several cow farmers there. We've seen cows through our pump station before. So we needed this protection to help us filter out potential obstructions that could get into our pump system and cause issues for our residents. And then we have planned some upgrades to our pump station at Sunset. Chairman, I mentioned this earlier. We were under design for this project when we were alerted that the new still water heights for the upper Barataria risk reduction system are now 13.5 feet still water, up from 8 feet still water. And this is something I think the CPRA, along with the parish, should look into very closely because it's going to have a significant impact on future projects and projects that have already been completed. This is our full upper Barataria risk reduction system alignment. You can see where we tie in at the Davis diversion over there, kind of that on the eastern side of the map here, and then where we tie in on the western side into Lafourche Parish, which is where we will connect to the Morganza system. Of note, small green dash there, right there, by segment 3 on the screen, is where a critical project, the Zalman's floodgate, will go. I know, Chairman, you've been working really hard with me to make sure that we can have that project come to fruition. And then that yellow segment is where we will tie back into Highway 90 to give us some interim protection until 75 can be built, which is in design right now up in Wisconsin, I believe, or St. Paul, Minnesota. Let's go next. And then this is just the Corps' alignment for the same system. All right, moving over to the east bank of the parish. We are now back in the vicinity of the Hydra system. We have 2 pump stations that were built by the Corps that the parish now operates and maintains. One is the Cross Bayou pump station. It's a 1,300 CFS pump station. It's the largest pump station in the parish. And then further up to our west, over in Norco, we have the 800 CFS pump capacity Trepanier pump station. We work very closely with the Pontchartrain Levee District with these 2 stations, with maintenance, and we appreciate their cooperation with us. Obviously, because some of our communities are flanked by not only the Mississippi River levee, but also the upper God levee to the Bonnet Spillway, it does make a challenging scenario for certain communities like Norco. So Norco is flanked by the Mississippi River levee to the south, to the west, the Bonnet Carey Spillway levee, and then to the north, the Hydra system. So they are boxed in, which makes mechanical removal of water the only method. We're in the process of upgrading this pump station here in the community that it currently pumps water into the spillway to have an increased capacity and an increased sump size. So you can actually see down there in the bottom corner where there's a house. We purchased a house. We've torn that house down. We will dig a sump in that area and bring a pump station, which is probably operating at less than 100 CFS capacity to over 300 CFS capacity. And our drainage master plan modeling shows us that that's going to solve about 95% of all the issues in this watershed. Under construction right now, over in months. Once again, you have the West Shore Hurricane Protection Levee going in near the lake, which leaves really the only way for us to evacuate water out of these watersheds is up and over into the spillway on the other side of that guideway, the west guideway of the spillway. So 2 pump stations under construction right now, 267 CFS and 340 CFS respectively under construction. That's a $33 million improvement, and we do want to mention that $10 million of that did come from the CPRA. When I started this project a few years ago, the costs were much lower. I should have asked for 15 or 20 million, but you live and you learn, I guess. This is just a breakdown of all our construction costs. Total project construction costs are 153 million. When you add our engineering, our mitigation and alerts, it's about 190 million. And I think we have a good story on the side there when you look at percent that was funded by grants. Total construction costs for completed projects to date, 77% of those have come out from outside money, with the addition of our levy millage money that has allowed us to really expand and do a lot of these projects. Construction costs for current projects is about 26%, and then estimated construction costs for future projects were at about 69%. So really exciting stuff happening, and we look forward to continuing our working relationship with the CPRA. And that concludes my presentation, Chairman. I'll give it back to you to answer your questions.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment, and I brought this up to President Cooper, now living in St. Tammany, is do we have, and I asked this to CPRA, and if we don't, we know these levees are going to send that water to the North Shore. And I asked St. Tammany if they've done any storm surge models, once that levee is completely in place, to project how far inland storm surge will go on the North Shore. As we're looking to design a berm to protect Fountain Blue State Park, where you'll be able to kayak out to that and lower that storm surge to our cabins that have been destroyed just about every hurricane. So as we know, the people on the North Shore don't want a flood wall blocking their view, but some type of berms with trees and rocks on the outside to lower that, take that initial storm surge across the North Shore Lake would surely be a mitigation project we could look at, as we know that water is going to come further inland. You know, as the houses right on the lake prepared for flooding, they've all been elevated. You get further inland with businesses all along that corridor, water going in another 4,000 or 5,000 feet would be devastating to the North Shore economically because of the businesses that aren't elevated on that corridor. So I hope as we go forward, we can work with President Cooper to look at those storm surge models. But great work you're doing in St. John. And I was over there after the flood. Those people desperately need that protection. They've been through this long enough, so great job.
Thank you. Any members? Well, from the chair, I see you believe in my phrase, you can't build 2 pump stations. Congratulations. I mean, that's what we were doing in Terrebonne 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, big pump stations like you're doing, and when it rains, you know, we've got as much as 15-inch rain, sometimes an 18-inch rain in a certain area, and these pumps keep up. And you know, when Governor Landry appointed me, one question I asked him, I said, you know, we're going to do the barrier islands, we're going to do the land bridges, we're going to do the coastal restoration, hurricane protection. But I really want to move heavily into pump stations and all the parishes, and he green lighted it and said, let's go with it, because, you know, the state only does 20 million a year in statewide flood program. That used to be 5 million a pump station. You can't only build, you're not going to build a full 500 CFS for $5 million anymore. So it's great to see the CPRA step in and help you, because you bonded a lot of your own money, and it's amazing at the pump station that you put in there. And we're working together on the design of the floodgate. They're doing a reverse head model that's required now. A lot of core, which is smart because of what happened in Terrebonne when the reverse head of 180 miles an hour pushed the Bubba Dove 70 feet over a 250-foot gate. So, and I know that's just about completed. We should get to funded this year. And I know it's getting close to get started and do temporary levee. They're right behind Spore, where we're going to tie into 90 until we get all the way to the food. So, great job. I enjoyed working with you. I mean, you really moved that parish alone. And, you know, Kramer was so devastated, so was Port of St. Charles, in the food, I coming right up the down, that floodgate's been on the books for, I don't know, 10, 15 years when I was there, and nothing was ever done, so thank you for pushing it forward.
But, Chairman, thank you. I know we have long conversations about pump stations. We have 56 pump stations in St. Charles Parish. It's a small parish, but because of the geological features that we have, where we're located on both sides of the Mississippi River, and the infrastructure that's in place to protect us from flooding, just like New Orleans, you kind of put yourself in that hole, so you have to have ways to get that out. I think out of all the pump stations, we have 56. I think 50 are on SCADA and telemetry. We have the ability to operate them remotely from our EOC. One of the last things I wanted to mention about where we're going, I put at everybody's desk our SHIELD plan, which I mentioned at a prior meeting. That's stabilizing habitats within through infrastructure, ecology, and defense. This is our plan to help restore some of the land that we've lost since Hurricane Ida. We've lost a tremendous amount of land, and it's through various methods. Rocking shorelines and helping in dredging and filling in areas that are no longer, are now open water. We've seen the success of the Davis Pond diversion that it's having in our area, and we are excited and eager to see an upper basin diversion somewhere through Edgard, bring fresh water into that upper basin there because it's an area that is just slowly suffocating because it does not get the tidal exchange that it needs to. In the summer, especially these hot times of the summer like this, the water up there gets very hypoxic, and it's not good for the habitats there. And the other thing that we're seeing is saltwater intrusion into the upper basin at unprecedented rates, and because we're not getting that tidal exchange that we need to, it lingers. So building a diversion, reconnecting the river in some form or fashion in the upper diversion to help flush out that salt water and keep that pushed back would be really great. Our residents in St. Charles Parish, our fishermen, really want this, and so we look forward to working with you, the chairman, and Michael on making that happen.
And plus the pump station that we're looking at active design with floodgate, that when we close it, we can start pump you out. So I know we're moving forward on that. Through the Lafourche Basin is looking at that along, of course, with your government.
Absolutely, thank you.
Well, thank you, and we have two speakers, Alan Drake, and we have a limit of 2 minutes. I think Bill is ready to go to lunch. Mr. Drake, thank you, Mr. Drake.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good
Basically proposing and trying to get into the planning process, the idea of providing free black and red mangrove seeds for volunteers, particularly commercial fishermen, to broadcast or directly plant. This is a way of getting mangroves in areas which we cannot get otherwise. And commercial fishermen understand the tides better than anyone. And what all they need, I'm proposing, is for this authority or others to provide free seeds at, say, where the diesel dock is, where they refuel their boats. And mangroves have unique capabilities. They, and I'm including areas where you expect the freeze to kill them every few years. Go ahead and plant the mangrove. If it's killed by frost in 7 years, it will, because mangrove wood, is very rot resistant, it will still be there, benefiting fisheries, benefiting capturing land, mud, and providing some additional wind friction. And this is a really high cost benefit proposal that I'm making. I want to put it in the 2029 plan, but I hope that you can at least think about budgeting some money for free mangrove seeds in the future before 2029.
Thank you very much, a great point. The next one is, Mark, you're gonna have to say your last name when you get up here. I can hardly read it. Starts with an S. Thank you, sir.
So I'm Mark Schluffstein, and I'm now a retired reporter for the Times-Picayune after 40 years covering coastal restoration, coastal erosion, the levee system, hurricanes, and other environmental issues. And I'm putting on my resident hat. I'm a resident of Metairie now after being washed out of Lakeview from my Hurricane Katrina. I want to thank Colonel Auten for earlier today giving a great review of the history of the levee system, which allows me to not go into that history as much as I might have had to. I will point out that in 2002, the Times-Picayune did a series that I led called Watching Away that was aimed at explaining that the New Orleans area hurricane levees were too low. At that time, they were too low because they were designed, just as Colonel Upton said, in the past, based on past decisions and the way the Corps worked at that time. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the levees were redesigned to modern standards, and those modern standards were in part, though, set by Congress, which said we are going to rebuild the levee system to a 1% alleged 100-year design standard based on storm surge elevations. That's not enough. And we knew it then, and we know it now. I will point out that on Saturday before Hurricane Katrina, I was sitting in the newsroom looking at a map of potential flooding from Hurricane Katrina that showed basically a Hurricane Betsy footprint of flooding of the city. And while I and the editor and publisher of the Times-Picayune were discussing arguing over where to put that map in the paper for the next day, Sunday before Katrina hit, the phone rings, and it's Max Mayfield, the director of the National Hurricane Center. And before I had a chance to say anything, Mayfield said, Mark, how high is your building? What kinds of winds can it withstand? And that was what I call residual risk. We need to understand that Hurricane Katrina is not what this new levee system is designed for. Katrina didn't hit us. It hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast with 28 feet above sea level of storm surge plus waves on top of it. On the east side of New Orleans, we had a storm surge equivalent to a 250-year storm. In Lake Pontchartrain, we had surge equivalent to a 150-year storm. those are both higher than the levee system that is built now. That levee system is the best levee system in the world. It is properly designed to withstand the effects of 100 years event, but it's not designed for what is occurring now in the Gulf of Mexico and along the East Coast. Storms like the one that is out there today, Aaron, that has increased in intensity and its potential impacts because of climate change. And that is going to continue to be occurring in the future. And our levee system needs to be updated to deal with that. Now, Congress has said it didn't go as far as I think it should go to a 500-year level of protection, but it did say that we need to have a 200-year level of protection looked at by the Corps of Engineers for the East Bank levee system in New Orleans. As we know, we don't have money given to us to do that study yet, but hopefully that will be done. But that also only is for the East Bank, it's not for the West Bank. And that should be something that your body should be urging Congress to do, which is, number one, get money to do the bank study as quickly as possible and to move forward with those projects. And secondly, to have the West Bank looked at it as well. And the key reasons to do that is because we don't have the ability we, the state of Louisiana, does not have the ability of raising money that would be necessary to elevate levees or do other projects, coastal restoration, to meet that 200-year level of protection. But Congress has the authority of providing money to us to do that with a 65-35 or at worst 50-50 split between the federal government and the state. And that's something that this body should be working on today as we move forward. Now, shut up.
Yeah, I agree 100%, but I want to say this, but I did recognize your name at first, but we talked over the phone quite a few times, and I apologize for that. I couldn't read your writing, but, you know, we talked quite a few times about all this, and I agree 100%. You know, in 2005, I owned a two-story home on the beach between Gulfport in Biloxi, right north of Ship Island. And that wave came over Ship Island, it hit my home. It was a 100-year-old home, and it hit it with a 28-foot wave. You're right, it went over Ship Island, which is a good island, very good island, and so you're 100% right. The storm hit the way big wave hit Mississippi because it completely wiped the house off. And that house went through Camille. It totally went through Camille. It also got Cypress, and that wave just completely demolished it. And what was really strange, I had a pretty big piece of property, and I had about 24 don't drive over the corner and pull up completely.
Setting aside the environmental on historic waterways or scenic waterways so we could dredge them. And in Plaquemines Parish after Katrina, we went and spent 80 million on cleaning every canal, waterway. We did it under state of emergency. We were told we needed to do environmental impacts. We didn't do it. We got yelled at, but we cleaned every waterway out. And not in 8 years this parish president did a house flood. Today, every degree warmer it is, 7% more water evaporates. So today it was 3 degrees warmer than yesterday, 21% more water is going up there. If we're unlucky enough that it comes down in your neighborhood, you're going to flood. So I want CPRA and our team here to consider next year's supporting legislation that will allow us to clean out these waterways, ditches, scenic rivers, so we can have a fighting chance. We all remember 2016 flood all over the state, and you see what's going on around this country. We have to get serious about more retention. We'll never pump it all out in doing that. So I hope we'll look at that going down the road. And the last thing I'll mention is, 3 years ago, we moved Cape Louisiana Beautiful into my office. We've made great progress. And I'm going to be looking, we're going to announce in the next couple of weeks at our Litter Summit that next September, we're going to have Clean Our Waterways Month, giving away thousands of buckets at every marina. We've got every bass club in the stadium plowed, and we want to put CPRA's logo on that bucket, and wildlife and fishery as we partner to clean up all of our waterways, streams, ditches, lakes, and give them away at every marina so people will take that bucket out into the waterways and clean up our waterways. We've made great progress. In the last 3 years, we went from 50 groups doing 11 boot week to 1,471. And the governor's given his full support. DOTD, Wildlife Fishery, DEQ are all on board in cleaning up Louisiana, and it's become a movement. So I just wanted to throw that out and look forward to partnering with CPRA to clean up our waterways. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just reiterate that if the West Bank and vicinity levee system is included in that 200-year study, that study is going to be, my assumption is that the study will really review how to look at things other than just elevating levees to provide protection to the levee system to reduce storm surge. And that means that any project that comes out of that will probably include those berms and elevated systems that we're talking about that will be federal, state funded, and as opposed to just the state putting up money, which will be very helpful when the DPOS money runs out.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we'd also like to thank Blaze with the Moral Foundation for having the meeting here at Dockville. It's a very, very kind of them to have it here. We've got to need a motion to adjourn, and we have a unanimous second. Thank you all so much for the great crowd and very, very good presentations, and we'll see y'all in 30 days. Thank y'all.